This is a conversation I've been waiting a long time to have. I love Emily Little's work. She has worked and lived in more than 30 countries across the globe and studied communities and cultures, how they support families through pregnancy, birth, and beyond. In her newsletter, Baby Mythbusters, she really picks apart the science but makes it actionable and relatable. And today's conversation, we're going to dive straight into some of those myths. So if you're wondering whether breastfeeding should be easy, or if your body should just snap back into the way it was before giving birth within 6 weeks, then this is the conversation for you. So in this episode, I am speaking to Emily Little, and Emily is somebody I have been really eager to get on the By Your Side podcast for quite some time now because I love Emily's work. But rather than me introducing Emily, I'm going to start with my first question. How would you describe yourself, Emily?
Oh gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me, Katie. I'm really happy to be here. It's nice to connect with you and all the listeners. I am a researcher by training, a global citizen, a mother, a passionate advocate for maternal health, so many different things. But yes, professionally, I got my training as an experimental psychology researcher at University of California, San Diego. And from there, really forged a multidisciplinary path of research studying parent-infant interaction and specifically parent-infant physical contact. So I wrote my dissertation on baby carrying as a cultural practice, as a psychological practice, and as a public health intervention. And that has then shaped, the next decade of my, almost decade now, almost next decade of my work, starting a nonprofit organization, advocating for maternal infant health, and being a consultant for perinatal health organizations to support products and programs that align with our biology and psychology and respect human culture so that we can have more effective solutions for babies and parents. So that's where I am here today.
Oh, I love that. And I love the fact it's that kind of almost like spider web of bringing all those different kind of flavors into what you do. And that's why I love, and we'll kind of dive into a bit more about the stuff that you do. But one of the things I'm really curious about is you've really worked in different countries, different cultures about parenting and becoming a mum, or the wider context of that within a community. And what would you say have you learned? What have been your biggest takeaways from kind of that exploration?
Yeah, biggest one is that there's no one right way to parent, or there's no one right way to be a baby in the world, right? Humans are programmed to soak up the cultural context that they are born in. That's what makes us humans, is we come into the world with brains that are soaking up information and growing rapidly in those first years of life. And so really human babies come into the world ready to accept whatever world is around them. And so we have a lot of pressure often in the Western world around perfectionism of parenting and, very rigid rules around parenting. And ultimately, babies are very flexible and there's not one right way to parent. That being said, if there was any way that was weird to parent, it would be what we're doing in the Western world, which is a little bit uncharacteristic of how humans have raised babies, throughout human history and across global cultures. And, painting a broad brush here, but things like parent-infant separation and, you know, not feeding your baby from your body and sleeping separately and kind of having these rigid schedules around infant care, that has historically and culturally been a quite unique way to care for babies. So I think parents in the Western world get very caught up with, oh, this is the way to do it. This is the way to be a good parent. And this is what I have to do. When in fact, that's really not the case at all. It's not actually accurate. And it's not actually a very representative way of raising babies as humans.
Oh, you see, that's so interesting. I think we kind of need to, I want to pick that apart a little bit more because I mean, my children are a lot older now. I was a kind of new mum a long time ago, it feels, now being a parent of teens. But it was very much, and I still remember, and I won't name the book, but there was a book that kind of, this is almost like the manual for babies. And there was a formula for getting your baby to sleep in a routine. And I have friends and I have family and, and all the mums that I speak to, there is still that cultural expectation. There is still that, whether it's parents or grandparents, whether it's even peers saying, this is what you should do. And and I would really love your take on, it was always seen as very weird or out there if you, and kind of going back through what you were saying about breastfeeding and feeding from your body is one thing, but still quite challenging. So there's been a lot of promotion around that, but it's still not the easiest thing to do in public. The wearing your baby or holding your baby constantly is still seen as an issue. Sleeping with your baby, all of these kind of aspects are still seen quite culturally, whether they're not, what you're saying is they're not culturally embedded. They are actually more recent kind of expectations in, as you've put it, kind of Western parent raised kind of parenting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I will, I always like to say that caregiving is always cultural. So I'm definitely not saying there's one biologically determined way that it has to be done because as humans we are cultural species, we are a cultural species, and so everything we do, and especially parenting, is inherently deeply cultural. So these are very much cultural practices, but as far as uh, I think the point I'm trying to make is that it's not representative. It's more representative cross culturally to do all of these things as far as being close to your baby, sleeping with your baby, feeding your baby from your body. That is far more representative of human cultures around the world. And, from what we know of the science, more in alignment with what babies biologically expect from their caregivers, from their environment as mammals, really, to have that contact and that human milk and responsiveness from their caregiver. So it's definitely biological and culturally intertwined. But yes, I would say the more representative way is to, have this close contact with your baby, which we kind of have forgotten about in Western society.
Yeah, and I love the way it's kind of actually what you do so beautifully is kind of look at the science. It's not just different cultures do it different ways, or your baby. It's kind of the science behind it, which I love. And I love you do something called the Baby Myth Buster series, which I'm going to drop a link into in the footnotes of the podcast. But I thought that would be quite a good way to kind of pose some of those, if that's okay. So I've got some kind of statements here, and I want you to either, are they myths that need busting? Is what I'm going to ask you, Emily, if that's okay. So the first one is breastfeeding is natural, therefore it is easy.
Yeah, that's such a big one. And I was just talking about this the other day. It's such a problematic one because it is absolutely a myth on so many levels. And because parents don't realize that it is false, that statement is false, they go into breastfeeding, wanting to feed their baby from their body, and then they're very shocked when breastfeeding turns out to be very difficult. And so that leads to a lot of parents feeling like failures when in fact breastfeeding is inherently a difficult process, going, way back into the science of how humans developed, both in terms of our evolution as a species and the development of our babies. There are several unique attributes that make it so that human babies actually have a different functional process breastfeeding than other mammals do. So when we compare ourselves to giraffes and gorillas and other mammals who feed their babies human milk and the process seems automatic, that's not a good comparison because it is more automatic in those species versus in humans. It's anatomically and psychologically and now culturally and systemically is much, much more difficult. And so, yes, that needs to be myth busted because breastfeeding is actually a very challenging process anatomically. And then, of course, on top of that, we have societal barriers, we have cultural barriers. As you mentioned, breastfeeding in public is still not accepted. So the barriers that make breastfeeding challenging are many. And so parents should never ever feel like failures when breastfeeding is challenging. Parents, I hope, should go into the process understanding how challenging it will be. And so preparing as much as possible. And I know that comes with a lot of barriers and privileges itself because many parents don't have the time or the resources to prepare for pregnancy and postpartum in the way that they would like to. But yeah, kind of normalizing the fact that yes, breastfeeding is not necessarily automatic. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to require learning from the mom. It's supposed to require learning from the baby. It takes a while for both parties to learn how to do it properly. And, even a parent who has successfully breastfed one baby may have a really challenging time with the next baby because all babies are different and their process for learning is going to be different. Their anatomy is going to be different. And so the way humans have survived in the face of that challenge is we have shared the responsibility of breastfeeding. So actually the physical act of breastfeeding another parent's baby is something that used to be very common in human societies and is still common in, very few societies now, but is a way that as humans have survived and gotten over this challenge. And if we kind of look at it in the modern context, one way that we can get around it is through donor human milk and donor human milk banks of some parents are just going to have a really extra hard time breastfeeding and maybe they won't even be able to breastfeed at all. But we do have these wonderful community supports and now institutional supports where everyone should theoretically be able to access human milk if we worked as a society to make this a human right. And so, yes, knowing that breastfeeding is challenging and also knowing that every baby should still be able to have access to human milk if they want it are both things that I think go hand in hand there.
And I just, all I could feel myself think was, it's okay for it to be a challenge. That's just that relief almost of like, it's okay. It's not that you're doing something wrong or that, and you may be having challenges and obviously seek professional support to help address those challenges if you are, but actually it's not that it should be easy and you're not getting it right, which was just you saying that made me go, oh,
Yes.
it's
Yes,
just,
and I
yeah.
hope parents everywhere I wanna share that message far and wide because there's nothing more sad to see a new parent just having those feelings of there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with my baby, when in fact, no, that's actually it's supposed to be challenging, it's supposed to require
Yeah.
learning, and really it's on us as a society to support parents better. It's not on the parents to carry that burden alone.
Fantastic. Right. Oh, I've got another one for you, Emily. The
Yes.
next one is carrying your baby all the time makes them clingy and you will spoil them.
Mhm. Yeah, this is such a silly one because when we think about kind of older children and I don't know, you as a parent of a teen, I imagine, if I don't know what your teenagers
Yeah.
are like, but
No, they are not clingy and I have not spoiled them.
I can just imagine a scenario where, a mother might really want an older child or a teen to come hug her, like, that seems like
Yeah.
something we would want, like, I want my partner to come hug me, I want the people in my life to come hug me, and so it just in general, that statement always seems weird to me of like, "Oh, well, what's wrong with wanting hugs in general?" So
Yeah.
that's part of it, but the other part of it is no, it's such a developmental process for a baby to need constant contact, and getting that contact is what will actually help them become more independent. So this myth of I'm going to train my baby to be alone in a crib or be alone on the ground and I'm not going to pick them up because then they'll become too dependent or too clingy or spoiled. just doesn't make any developmental sense at all. So, really, from a developmental psychology perspective, we want to meet babies' needs as much as possible in every developmental stage. And yes, in those early days, weeks, months, really constant contact is what babies come out into the world expecting. And it's really their safety zone. It's what allows them to be curious. It's what allows them to learn to love to explore because they're able to see the world from a place of safety and regulation. And so that allows them to, yes, gradually work out to exploring the world independently. But if they're forced into it and forced to be separated and forced to not have that place of safety and co-regulation, that can really be traumatic on many levels for the baby. And I think the thing we don't talk about enough is the trauma that can also be felt by the parent, but they are maybe not in tune with it, or maybe it's something they realize later, but they may follow this societal expectation of having separation from your baby and then have this visceral feeling that maybe they don't even recognize for months or years of, oh, I actually also needed that contact with my baby. It's very
Yeah.
healing for the birthing parent as well. And, has been shown to improve regulation and calmness in the birthing parent as well. So I think both parties involved are really in need of that close contact in the immediate postpartum. And then, of course, beyond, as humans, as mammals, we always need contact. We always need physical contact. But the thing of developmentally it's going to make them spoiled or clingy or dependent is just false and comes from a place of not understanding developmental psychology at all. So yes, thank you for helping me bust that and spread the word. I hope that as a society we can get over that soon.
Yeah, I had a lovely guest, Dan Berman. He was
Yeah.
our very first podcast guest. And I remember he said a phrase, you cannot spoil a baby. And I love that phrase. And I think what you've just said highlights that. And what I love is that you bring actually the science and the studies around actually by having a baby with you and carrying. And that's, you kind of do a lot of the it's not swaddling, is it? Where you actually strap a baby to you,
Yeah,
that the baby's with you, that is the safest space and actually encourages them to be independent. And I love that. They're kind of actually, you're doing the best for that child to be independent
absolutely.
from you. And believe me, by my eldest is 6'4". I could not still be carrying him, but he does still want cuddles. So,
Oh,
this, we all need a bit of contact, don't we?
yes, yes.
Oh, I've got two more for you. So the next one, and this is, I'm sure anybody who has recently had a baby or this is a one I remember is your body will be back to normal in 6 weeks.
Yes, I it's so problematic that we even have a reason to tell parents this. I think about other cultures around the world where they have ceremonies to honor and kind of welcome the new birthing parent as a new person in society, like really honoring this. You have gone through a huge transformation. You are a new person, you're a new member of our community, and we're going to celebrate and honor that. And I wish Western culture, modern Western culture, could learn just a little bit of that so that we get away from this trying to get back to how we used to be. Healing is one thing, and that's even false from a healing perspective, but just from a physiological transformation, psychological transformation, this idea that you'll be back to normal, you'll get your body back, to me is very much, why are we trying to move backwards? We should be moving forwards and honoring and celebrating this person. But yeah, I mean, especially for someone who's lactating, I mean, really the postpartum changes your body goes through last years. And the science I love to share around this is on brain changes as well. And so
Yes.
the mommy
Yeah.
brain, the myth of the mommy brain as being a deficit has really been debunked lately in neuroscience with some really incredible studies that have tracked mothers from pregnancy all the way through postpartum, showing that yes, up to 2 years, really the changes are deeply, deeply ingrained in the brain, and some may last forever as far as your brain anatomically, physically anatomically, but also functionally changes to face this new and exciting responsibility in your life. So, yes, on a body level, on a neural level, on a psychological level, it's all different after giving birth. And we should celebrate that rather than trying to get back to some weird standard or weird benchmark of normalcy.
Yeah. I think there is so much though, Emily, isn't there, around the expectation of for you to get back to being who you were, because you need to get back to that person. And I know, speaking to so many mums, the level of grief that feels of actually, I'm not the person I used to be, or I'll never be the person I used to be. And I wonder whether if we culturally had more of a embracing, as you said, that celebrating of, no, you never are. Because we aren't, we're not meant to be as humans. And this is such a big change in your life that actually to celebrate it and maybe grieve what was, but celebrate that what is and what is becoming.
Exactly.
But there's so much pressure, isn't there, of like, I'm not going to be, or I should be what I was, let alone getting in the skinny jeans ever again. It's
Right.
more than that, isn't it? It's that so much pressure to be who you were and function in that same way rather than
Yeah.
actually you're a new person.
It's really sad. And, I think one of the smartest things I did, I thought about getting pregnant for years before we before we embarked on this parenthood journey, just because this has been my work for so long. So I was probably way too way too obsessively kind of working on preparation for this. But I think one of the smartest things I did, or the thing I did that I'm most grateful for, which wasn't something that anyone even suggested to me, and I think it would be nice if this was more ingrained into how we prepare for birth. But little things, I did something very small, which was I chopped my hair off right before, like the last couple days before my due date. And that was my one little thing of, oh, I'm recognizing that I'm going into a new space as a new person. And of course, cutting your hair is a very superficial, not dramatic transformational thing, but it was one very symbolic thing of, I'm going to let go of whoever I was and kind of step into this newness and not look back. And so that little thing kind of just set me up, I think, to be ready for that. And I would encourage others to think about maybe a little ritual or something that you could do as you go over this threshold into parenthood in a way that kind of celebrates or marks that, you know, step into the newness and letting go of your past self. And if grief comes with that, fine, and kind of sitting with that and letting yourself process that, maybe even before having your baby, knowing that it's coming and welcoming that rather than being kind of shocked by it, or, really hit in the head with being unexpectedly changed. I wish we kind of welcomed that change a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, because what you're saying is so powerful, because it's giving you the power just to mark that change
Yeah.
and get ready for it. And that means that you get the power back as an individual, and you're kind of setting yourself up for that. Oh, I've got one more. Right. Letting your baby cry it out is harmless.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, there's a deep breath. I
Yeah.
love it. It's like, whoo.
Yeah, I every time I think about this, I get the chills, not in a good way of like, I get the chills in a way that it viscerally makes me just feel very uncomfortable of that thought of letting a baby cry. And I know some people feel that viscerally in their body and some people don't, and that's okay. But I also know that there's a lot of structural barriers that put people in really challenging situations where they are needing to go back to work too early, especially in the US, where I am
Yeah.
based. And so there's this really, really challenging predicament where parents have to go back to work, they have to get the sleep, and so they are needing baby to sleep through the night so that they can function and survive and take care of their family and, meet their economic needs of their family. And so there's a lot of trauma I know that happens on the parent side of, oh gosh, I either had to do this or even felt pressured from society, whether mother-in-laws or pediatricians or whomever, saying that this is, the expected thing to do, and the parent feeling a lot of trauma sitting through sleep training with their baby. So I just want to name that of like, this is a hard thing for parents. And it also is, I think, a really good reminder that we need both structural, systemic change and cultural change, because even in countries where we're just highlighting Denmark as a country where we know that they have lots of parental leave and lots of structural supports for parents, yet still culturally, it used to be a big, part of the culture to practice cry it out methods and sleep training. And there's been a pretty large push to change that culturally in Denmark, which has been wonderful to see. So, I say that all to answer your question. We we know pretty clearly. I mean, we can absolutely nitpick the methods of the science, and I'm totally here to do that objectively. And the studies that do show harm from the cry it out method are not perfect methodologically. But for example, what some of them have shown is that when babies stop crying, which means that they effectively have been able to be trained to sleep through the night, or at least be quiet through the night, what we see is, one, they're not actually sleeping more. They are just being quiet, which is the first kind of red flag. So, okay, they're not actually sleeping more. They are just waking up and not asking for help anymore. So that is one thing that's like, ooh, that's a little gut wrenching, heart wrenching in itself. But then the other piece that one study has shown is, even though crying stopped, cortisol, stress hormone in babies, was still elevated, even though they were not crying. And so that tells us that physiologically, again, the baby is on high alert. They are feeling unsafe, yet they're not crying out for help. So I think, to me, humans are resilient. And so if you needed whatever you need to do to your baby, like, most babies turn out fine, right? Even with really awful circumstances. However, we want the best for our babies. And I think from just developmental and communication perspective, we want our babies to know that they can ask for help at the very least. So even long-term damage aside, like, don't we want them to know that we are here to help them? Don't we want them to ask us for help? Don't we want them to communicate when they feel unsafe? I want that for my my babies and my children. And so I and I know most parents do. And so I think kind of reframing that as like, is it long-term damage versus not long-term damage? I would guess long-term damage. We maybe don't know conclusively. However, the developmental implications are very clear, which is that baby stops asking for help. So I think
So,
that's
and I suppose I want to caveat this slightly with, there is the using it as a method to train your child, but there are also times where, as a parent, it all feels a bit much, or you've gone through everything, you've changed the diaper, you've fed them, you think it might be colic, but you don't know. So there can be a variety of reasons. So it's not that if you let your child cry at all, they'll be emotionally damaged and scarred for life. It's about this. This is the conversation of using this as a training method and the implications of that. But
exactly.
if we kind of circle back around to what you were saying, actually, if your baby's crying, but you are with them, holding them, you're not putting them down in a separate room to cry it out, but you're with them, then that has a different, does that have a different outcome?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a big proponent of not not, thinking crying is a horrible thing because it's at the end of the day just communication. And so
Yeah.
if we treat it that way, imagine if an adult came up to you and said, I'm feeling really, really grief ridden right now. I'm feeling really sad. I really need a hug. What if we were to say, no, go in the other room. I'm going to go make some lunch. Like, it's just like
I can't
it's
handle your
so hard.
emotions right now. Yeah. Yeah.
So if we just think of it as communication of like, oh, you're sad and you need a hug. Of course I'm here to hug you. And like, it's okay to be sad and I'm here for you. And this is a safe space. I mean, we are good at that. We have gotten better at that as a society as far as normalizing talk therapy and normalizing emotions and
Yes.
normalizing
Yeah.
feelings. But somehow we missed the empathy and normalization of that with babies, which to me is very peculiar. Of like, this is where it
Yeah.
matters the most.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it plays into, and I know this is one of your kind of your big myths that you really are there to like dispel, is that good baby. That good babies don't cry.
Yes. Yes.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, babies cry. I mean, like this is how they learn to communicate. And I think the more that as a society we can embrace babies if with their messiness and not expecting them to be a certain way or act a certain way or be a certain level of quietness. They're just learning about the world. They're learning to communicate, and it's our job to listen to them. And it's our job to, be a partner with them, trying to figure out what they need because they're just trying to figure it out too. And so, together, if we figure it out, then at least that they know, even if the parent can't figure it out, at least the parent is trying. And I think that's what matters for the baby is they want to know someone is there being a partner with them and is listening to them. So the thing about crying and yeah, seeing crying as a horrible thing, ultimately there's many different ways that we can tell babies it's not okay to cry. And yeah, ultimately those are just going to have really deep implications for how the baby moves through, how that child moves through the world and thinks about communication, because that sends a very clear message about communication.
absolutely. That's so beautiful. And it is, as you said, I think giving the adult, what would you do if was an adult? Is yeah, talking, being with, physical touch is things that we are wired and predisposed to do. And it's exactly the same. The baby crying is not something you've done wrong. It's communication, which is just
Exactly.
beautiful. So I have the same question for all of my guests at the end. And so and you have so much experience and so much knowledge. And as you said, you've kind of almost been leading up to the point of becoming a mom yourself. And I know you're not as far along in the journey by any means as I am, but is there anything that you would go back and say to maybe even before you had your child or when you first had your child that you would do differently, or you would just say to that younger version of you, what's the best advice that you would give?
Hmm. That's tough. I mean, I maybe just because it's top of mind right now, but thinking about the transformation, I think I could have leaned into that even more of like giving myself more space physically, psychologically to really embrace that transition. I think I did, a pretty good job, but it's still been a process, a transition process. But yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I think there's yeah, there's so many layers to it, but I think the thing most powerful for me was leaning into that transition. So, if I could have, yes, disconnected from work sooner, given myself more space from work, that's always been a
Yeah.
challenge for me, and it was kind of like a wrangling process for me to finally come to terms with the fact that, like, "Oh, okay, I really need to rethink my career and how I'm working right now," because leading a team and being always on as an executive director is just not in alignment with my parenting of a toddler
Yeah.
right now. So I think I did a lot to kind of ready myself for that psychological transition, but my structural and career-based transition, I think I could have given myself more intentional space of like, maybe just let's just pause. And that also comes with a lot of privilege. I have a lot of privilege and also did not have the financial privilege to completely stop working. So
Yeah.
it was also not possible. But as a society, I hope we work towards that point where everyone can have the financial means and the psychological means and the social means to really pause and honor this transition and kind of step into the newness of being a parent with just no expectations and lots of possibilities for what the future might hold. So yeah, I think it's a
Oh.
really, really magical transition, and I wish that everyone has the time and space to honor that.
Oh, I love it. That is such a beautiful mission. Emily, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And I will definitely share the link to your Baby Mythbusters because I love reading them because you make it so sensible and accessible. And certainly I read them and go, oh, yeah, that makes sense, which is fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. This was great. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, happy to be connected with you.
Before we finish, I just wanted to say this. If today stirred anything up for you, you don't need to make sense of it all right now. You can just let it land slowly. Parenting asks so much of us, especially when you're already feeling stretched. And sometimes just having the words for what we're feeling is enough for today. But if you do need more support, make sure you reach out to a trusted friend or professional. If this episode supported you in any way, you can follow by your side so that these conversations are there for you when you need them. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'm really glad you're here.